Welcome to Jhart Modelworks. In this episode, we'll be turning our attention to the interior. There's quite a bit going on, so grab a drink and maybe a snack and let's get to work. We've taken all the parts off the sprues and cleaned them up, and we're going to start by gluing the seats to the seat backs. We're just using some Tamiya Extra Thin, and we're applying it liberally to the front and the backs of the seats. Next, I'm going to take a small chisel and I'm going to chisel out the detail for the radio, mostly the buttons, but I just want to make sure I have a nice flat surface. I will be replacing this later with a more modern stereo from Detail Masters. I'm just working the edge of the chisel in and then just giving it a light scraping motion until basically I just scrape off all that detail. And now I'm just using the edge of a flat file to just make sure I've got it as clean as I can get it. It took me a second to remember what I was drilling here. We've sanded the ignition switch off the steering column and we're just drilling a small hole in the area. We're going to replace that with some extra detail later on. Also from Detail Masters, we have some photo etched speaker grills. I want them lifted up slightly though, so we're going to make a template with some masking tape and then we'll transfer it to some 0.01 inch styrene sheet. Using our hobby knife and some Display nippers, we're going to trim this up as close as we can, and then we'll just use a sanding stick to round off all the edges and make sure our edges are all nice and clean. Now we're going to carefully peel off our template so that we can use it to make a second one, exactly the same shape. And just make sure everything matches up right. And now we're going to go ahead and make some marks so that we can line these up, because we want these about equal distance back, and we want them kind of specifically located so that they're an equal distance apart from each other. And finally, we're just going to glue these in place with some Tamiya Extra Thin. Sorry it's a bit washed out. I have my lamp on high and the camera just did not like it at all. You can kind of see them here though. And this is sped way up. We're literally just drilling some holes on the tops of the door cards. Later we'll add some door locks here. Now that everything's ready, we can get some paint on the parts and continue on. We've painted the floor in LP15 IJN gray, and we're going to mask off that black floor mat before we do some flocking. We're going with the gray flocking again. Honestly, I'm just trying to use this up so that I can try some embossing powder next time I do the gray floor. We're using some Tamiya acrylic semi-gloss for our bonding agent. We're going to put that on nice and thick, and then we're going to use our tea strainer to sieve some of this flocking material all over the clear. If you don't get perfect coverage on the first pass, you can add some more clear and add another layer of flocking on top. It does work. Now we'll just tap out the excess and repeat for the other side. There we are, all done. It did get a little thin right there, but that's okay, that'll get covered up. I thought it would be cool to scratch build a shifter. We're absolutely not doing this because I stripped the chrome off the original kit part and then lost the shifter. That's not important. So we're just going to make a template of the hole where the shifter goes, and we're going to cut that out in some styrene. We're then going to cut 3 more, just making them gradually smaller each time. Using a sanding stick, we're going to clean up the edges and round off the corners. We'll just make sure everything fits the way it's supposed to. We're going to test fit the bottom piece of the shift boot, and then we're going to make a mark where the hole is, and we're going to drill that out where our shifter needs to go. We've cut and shaped 4 increasingly smaller rectangular strips of sheet plastic, and we're going to glue them together in a stack to form the shifter boot. Unfortunately, these are very small, and in order to see what I was doing, I got my head in front of the camera. Now we're going to drill the hole for the shift knob all the way through the stack. Make sure you don't drill through your finger. Next, go raid the wife's sewing pins and get one of the good ones with the plastic ball on the top, and sand it smooth to make sure there's no seam. Just try not to get caught. The shifter comes straight up out of the boot and then angles back, so we're just going to put a slight bend in the metal pin, preferably without stabbing ourselves. After a bit of paint, we have our shift boot and we have our shift knob. I went with some Tamiya LP48 Sparkling Silver coated with some Tamiya LP68 Clear Blue. And now we need to add the decal to the end of the shift knob. Now Revell provides us with a black and a white set of shift pattern decals, and we're going to go with the white one. Once the decal is dried, we'll push the boot onto the metal pin all the way up to the bend. We'll then add some CA glue to the pin just below the boot and then push the boot back down onto the glue. Now all we have to do is cut the end of the pin off and then we can glue it down into the center console. In the prep stage, we chiseled out all the detail for the radio, and we're going to replace it with one of these radio faces from Detail Masters. A tip I find useful when cutting photo etch off the fret is to put some tape behind it so that when you cut it, it doesn't ping off into space. We're going to use the back of the hobby knife with some Vallejo silver to hit these AC controls. Not that anyone will ever see them, but I just have these compulsions. During our prep, we drilled a hole in the steering column, and we're going to fill that hole with one of these 1.2mm rivets from Top Studios. This is going to give us a nice shiny metallic key slot for our ignition switch. A little bit of CA glue, and then carefully fit it in the hole. Now we're going to do some decals, starting with the triangle that goes on the steering wheel. We're going to follow that up with the SS396 logos that go on the door cards. The bare metal foil work was an absolute nightmare, and my battery died on my phone, so you didn't even get to see any of it. But none of that bare metal foil wanted to stick. I had to fight every single piece. Dash cluster consists of these 3 square decals. Very strange. There's this long silver 396 logo that goes on the dash. I went ahead and bare metal foiled that just in case, so that if the decal didn't quite fit right or didn't cover all the way, I'd have silver all the way back there. And I just applied the decal on top. Everything really fit nicely though. And we're going to simulate the glass over the lenses with some clear UV glue. It probably would have been flatter and looked better had I cut some squares out of clear acetate, but hindsight is 20/20. Now for the seats. The seats in this kit were pretty good, but we're going to add some detail like colored piping, metal trim, and seat belts. This was a good deal of work and takes up a good chunk of the video. We're using some 30 gauge wire I got off Amazon for spark plug wire. It works really good here too. We want to carefully apply some glue just to the side that we'll press into the seat. I'm using some CA glue here. We're going to take our time applying small amounts of glue and chasing the wire around the edge of the seat. We could just follow it all the way around, but to mimic how the seat can actually fold, I went ahead and cut the piping and carried it on around the bottom as a separate piece. Keep an eye on your fingers and clean them often so you don't get any CA all over the seats and damage the paintwork. We're going to do the exact same process around the seat with some 22 gauge high polished jewelry wire. This will, however, be a little harder to bend and work with, so we're just going to take our time. We are going to glue this to the seam where the front and back of the seat parts meet. This is going to simulate the chrome trim around the seats without the hassle of bare metal foil, and it'll hide any of the gaps in the seams for where we glued the seats together. Because this is a little harder to bend and get it to hold its shape right, we're going to use some super glue kicker here and there to glue it down just to speed up the process a little. The 30 gauge will bend and pretty much stick where you put it. This stuff wants to spring back up away from where you glued it. The CA kicker just helps hold it in place faster. There we go. There's a small gap down there that'll get hidden by the center console when we glue it down. We repeated that with the other seats. Unfortunately, I was out of frame when I was doing it. Now we're going to mask the seat off and we're going to apply some flocking to that back shelf. We're also going to mask off the raised area for our speaker grills. I'm going to apply some of the semi-gloss clear. And then our gray flocking. And now we can strip away the masking and we can glue on our aftermarket photo etch speakers. These little raised pieces I added will lift that speaker grill up and make it look more like the aftermarket installed speakers you saw a lot of in the 80s. Now it looks like I'm applying a ton of CA glue. I'm really not. What I'm doing is making sure it's spread really thin and evenly so that it holds evenly but it doesn't squish up through the grill and mar the photo etch surface. Now we're going to apply a bit of bare metal foil to the trim along the back between the shelf and the seat, and this tiny little piece should have been really simple, but it absolutely fought me all the way. It didn't want to hold down, it didn't want to cut, just an absolute nightmare. For seatbelts, I'm going with the buckles from Model Car Garage and latches from Small Great Decals. The buckles come with the front and the back part. We're going to cut one of each off. The back piece has two tabs, one on each side, that you want to fold over and then press down on top. It kind of raises the top of the buckle up off the bottom. So we're just going to use the photo etch bending tool, or if you don't have one, just use some pliers and just bend those little tabs up, and then using our pliers, we're going to press them down. I like to cut the ribbon to a sharp point. It makes it easier to feed through the openings in the photo etch parts. We want to feed it from front to back through the top part of the buckle. We'll then feed it through the bottom piece as well, so that the folded bits face the top part. And then we'll use the ribbon as a guide to glue them together. Now we just put some super glue on the inside of the ribbon and fold it over the back. Using our hobby knife, we'll carefully trim off the excess and kind of measure this against our seat, and then cut it and glue it in place. Now don't just flop it over and glue the buckle down. We want to glue the ribbon down to follow the contours of the seat to give it that realistic look of gravity. For these latches from Small Great Decals, I find it's easier just to feed the ribbon through the holes while the buckle is still on the sprue, then cut it off and glue the ribbon down. These buckles are really nice and they work well with my 1/16 inch ribbon. Repeat that for the rest of the seats, and remember there's 3 sets of seat belts on the back. Remember the hump? Nobody ever wanted to ride on the hump, but there's seat belts for there. Time for final assembly. Our dash is looking good. Our steering column with our little ignition switch. For our steering wheel, I painted the center blue instead of dark gray. Our pedals, it's a shame these are going to disappear because they came out really nice. With our door cards, all that silver is bare metal foil. They came out really well. With our seats, with our speakers. Oops, left a bit of wash back there. Clean that up real quick. Our shifter and our center console. That looks good. I'm going to start by gluing in our pedals. I'm going to hold that down with a toothpick until that sets. Now we're going to assemble the dashboard. I'm going to start by gluing our steering column in place. Then we'll add in our steering wheel, make sure we get it nice and straight. Now for the back seat, what we're going to do is we're going to run glue all the way around the front edge, and we're going to put glue on the curve that goes on these wheel wells. Then working from the center, we're going to put in our center console. We're going to glue in our seats next, and I'm going to put glue all the way around these seat bases. Now before we put the door cards in, we're going to take some of these 0.8mm rivets from Top Studios, and we're going to glue them into the door cards, into those holes we drilled. Now the passenger side, I glued all the way down, so it looks like the door lock is locked. The one on the driver's side, I left sticking up a bit, so it looks like it's unlocked. Now with that done, we're just going to glue our door cards in place. There's a little tab at the back that goes behind the seat and under that shelf. You can tell I'm getting kind of tired. I'm just dropping the glue straight on the dash here. But the dash just slides into these little slots. Perfect. And here's our interior all assembled. I think that's coming along nicely. Really like the added detail from the photo etch for the seat belts and the speakers. Yep, that'll do just fine. That's going to wrap it up for this video. Next up on the build, we finally have the body in 2K, so I may finish up the body video, or we may move to the engine bay as I have a couple of things planned for there as well. Not sure, we're going to have to see which way we go. For now though, thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll catch you on the next one. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. Also feel free to leave comments, feedback, critique, or anything else in the comments section below. I enjoy interacting with all my viewers in the comments section and try to reply to all the comments I receive. If you want to catch future videos, please consider subscribing to my channel and make sure you click the bell notification icon so you can be notified when I upload new videos. As always, thank you for watching, keep modeling, and have a great day.